the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week.
Hi, I'm Kristen Gilliland, and welcome to Business Story of the Week.
Fantastic. That is Kristen, and I am your host, Joshua. And today's question is our mind powerful enough to overcome life's toughest challenges? I mean, is it truly the secret to overcoming any challenges? Well, Kristen is the perfect guest to answer that question, and she will be joining us for today. Kristen earned her PhD in organic chemistry at the University of Colorado. She later served as an associate professor at Cal Poly State University, where she taught organic chemistry, neurochemistry, and the chemistry of drugs and poisons. After Kirsten's 17-year-old son developed schizophrenia, which was most likely a result of high-potency cannabis use, Kirsten joined the Warren Center for Neuroscience Drug Discovery at Vanderbilt Medical School. And there, she researched new antipsychotic treatments for schizophrenia. During that same year, Kristen delivered TEDx presentations titled Rewiring Revolution, Neuroplasticity's Impact to Well-Being. Tragically, Kristen lost her son to an accidental overdose in 2019 after his mental health severely declined. Kristen is, of course, today focusing now to mental health advocacy, and today she now serves as director of Outreach and Advocacy Program at the Warren Center of Neuroscience Drug Discovery. Kristen educates parents and teens on the risk of substance use. In 2024, April of 2024, Kristen appeared on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt as part of the Kate Snow interview regarding high-potency cannabis use during adolescence connected to increased psychosis risk. Combining her scientific expertise with a personal mission to prevent similar strategies, Kristen today is going to share her experiences and her insight. And Kristen, I'm just very excited for this episode. Thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and thank you, Joshua, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Kristen, I love that poster right behind you. Be kind to your mind is very, very important. A very important lesson, especially I feel like to start off today's show. Kristen, I mean, there's a lot to unravel there on that introduction and that bio as yours as well. But more importantly, it's the struggle, the journey that you have been through as well. Kristen, already you are quite an inspiration to me. You experienced tragic loss in your life, but not only did you did you go through that, but you turned it around and you are helping educate people through what you've experienced. Christian, I want to get right into it. Talk to us a little bit about the intersection of chemistry and mental health, and how has it shaped your career today?
I'd love to. As far as mental health goes, I like the phrase "brain health equals mental health,"
Mm,
and I really, we're taught about our heart, how to keep that healthy. We're taught about our lungs. We're taught about our body and trying to
mm,
stay in shape. But
mm.
we're really not told about our brain and like, let's keep our brain healthy.
Right.
And one of the most crucial times is during adolescence, which is about from age 10 to your early 20s. And this is the time when uh, you're really shaping your mind to who and how you want to be as an adult.
Yes.
And so learning how to form healthy connections in the way of being kind to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
self-compassion, realizing that your brain uh, is can make these connections based upon the way let's see, I would say your self narrative, the way you speak to
Yes, of
yourself,
course.
your
Yes.
environment around you, your actions and what you do. And we have that through plasticity.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
we're not taught this as children. We're not
Yes,
taught
of
the
course.
fact of what's going on in our brain. And if you were able to see how magnificent it is and that you could actually form healthy connections that can lead you to good mental health and your best self mentally, I think we would have a lot less potential problems with substance use disorder or just there's a lot, sadly, a lot of suicide
That's
going
true.
on right now, especially for
Mhm,
adolescents.
mhm.
And so I really want to inform parents and teachers about the developing brain and how magnificent and special and just everything they can do with it.
I love it. I love that. And it's a great mission. And like I said, it hits home. And I told you this prior to recording. But more importantly than that, Kristen, it's like you talk about mental health that is not being taught enough to, it's not, we're not being taught to take care of it. And I think it's important now more than ever because of all the overwhelming information and stimulation that we're receiving. I feel like this has led our adolescents or the younger people to, to more anxiety, to more kind of like it's harder to deal with life because now you just have so many things going on. And if we're not taught how to deal with this, it's just uh, it's almost impossible to overcome. And the easiest way to kind of deal with it, of course, is turning to substance, turning to drugs, turning to alcohol, turning to this self-harming practices where really all we needed to do was to just, you know, sit down and think about how can we take care of our mind, how to be kind to your mind, right? And Christian, I understand that this is something that you do, and this is not something that you do, not something that you teach, but something that you studied very heavily. Christian, talk to us about the origins of this. Of course, we talked a little bit about into your introduction. Talk to us about that journey. What was it like, and what was that pivotal moment? What was that turning point where you said, "I'm going to study this. This is what I'm gonna, focus my life's work, and I'm gonna help others do it." What was that pivotal moment for you?
So for me, it was honestly the day that I lost my son. I had, I studied neurochemistry and taught neurochemistry and the chemistry of drugs and poisons,
Mhm.
and this was prior to the passing of my son. And I watched my son struggle with his mental health and just trying to help him as much as I could through that. Um, but it was during, after that day he died, it was like my life started, the life as I knew began again, but it
Right.
wasn't the same me. I
Yes.
knew
Yes.
that I have two separate lives now, the one before, when he was alive, and the one after now. And
Hmm. Hmm.
it took me a while, and this is the thing that I want to inspire people with too, because it took me a while to get back on my feet enough to know that I was given this gift of what I had studied, of
Hmm.
what I had done. And I would ask my son, Anders, his name, I'd ask him repeatedly, like, how can I help? What can I do? And he brought, I truly believe this, a 13-year-old girl came over to my house who, it was during COVID,
Okay.
and she wanted to learn science and
Hmm.
specifically neuroscience.
Hmm.
And so I began to teach her every Sunday. And
Wow.
then I started to notice that she had cuts on her arms. She had cuts, and I didn't say anything, but I realized, like, oh my goodness, she's struggling. There is something. So I started to ask her questions about just
Hmm.
her mental health and how she's doing. And she
Hmm.
started opening up. And then she started doing better in coming over with learning, and you could see her kind of start to blossom. And I thought, that's it. My son right then sent her to me to learn that let's teach kids about their brain. Let's teach about neuroplasticity. Let's teach about resilience.
Hmm.
When we think about when you go through something, and what I went through, and it sounds like you may be similar, but when you go through something like that, it is life-changing moment, and it is a moment that we have to go through all the time. Life is not just good and bad. It's really comfortable and uncomfortable.
Yes.
And when we
Yes.
can learn how to get through the uncomfortable to get to the comfortable and pick ourselves back up, that's where the magic happens.
That is
It's
true.
when
I
you
love
learn
that.
what you're made of, who you are, what you're proud of yourself, what you can do on your own. That's when the magic happens. And I think so much in life now, we just want that instant pill or that instant whatever it
Yes,
is
of course.
to take you to the comfortable.
Hmm.
But it's where the uncomfortable, we could get people to have
Yes.
bumper stickers says live the uncomfortable, it's
That's it.
just
That's it.
something.
Why not? Why not?
And
I w-
right.
I would love to make bumper stickers like that as well. Let's put it around. Let's make it Dr. Kirsten Gilliland's, bumper stickers, and let's put like live the uncomfortable. But I think it's necessary. It's really important in our lives because we need it's a mental resilience, so to speak, right? Because it's one thing to be maybe emotionally resilient, physically resilient. Like you said, it's we're always being taught to take care of these two parts, but the mental aspect is less taken care of, so to speak. I feel like we assume that if we take care of these other parts of ourselves, we reduce the risk of breaking down, we reduce the risk of but it's completely different, of course, especially with what you know about neuroscience as well, Dr. Kristen. Right now what I feel is like it's a difficult conversation to have, right? Especially when it comes to cannabis use. I want to take us a I want to walk through this a little bit before we get deep into the neuroplasticity and into the mental health, which we really want to focus on. But I want to lay the groundwork a little bit here because, again, um, especially today with cannabis use, right? It's so popular. You can't. It's so popular. Legalization. People. It's not addictive. It's so healthy. It's people. It reduces depression. It reduces your anxiety and all of that. But the data is there. The data is linked to an increased risk of psychosis. And we have experienced this personally, and of course, in our family as well. The thing is, when you start talking about that, it's a difficult conversation to have. You can't even begin it because you can't even start it because people are like, no, I'm not feeling it doesn't connect. Because it's for decades and decades. We've never experienced this. But now it's becoming more apparent because there are more adolescents who are using highly potent cannabis, and it's actually there's data correlated to increased risk of psychosis. Dr. Kirsten, I want to use this platform. It's very important that we are able to talk about this. Talk to us about the relationship there. Why do you think that is so? And how did this change your view when it comes to cannabis use, especially knowing that it could have likely triggered your son's psychosis?
Yeah. Thank you for asking me this question. And I'm sorry that your family has dealt with this because it's very difficult. Um, there, there's no doubt that it relates to the higher potency cannabis and
Mm.
looking at higher, just an increase in the amount of THC that's in the cannabis today
Yes.
versus when I was young, it was about 5% THC.
Hmm.
And now it's the flower itself, the cannabis flower is
Yeah.
about between 20
Hmm.
and 30%. And then the
It's,
cannabis concentrates are up to some 95% THC.
it's so much. It's too much.
It's too much. And
Hmm.
what happens is in the brain, you have this system that's called the endocannabinoid system. And this
Hmm.
system is meant to regulate communication in your brain.
Right.
So it is trying to keep your brain balanced,
Hmm.
keep it in homeostasis.
Hmm.
And you have these receptors that are like parking spots that your brain makes these chemicals that bind into it, and it says, okay, let's turn up the gas here, or let's step on the brake here because there's too much activity going on.
Hmm.
Well, in these receptors, this is where THC goes in.
Right.
And so what happens if people are using this high potency THC, cannabis,
Yes.
it is basically just flooding the system, right?
Right.
And it's binding to all of these receptors, what are called CB1 receptors. And we
Hmm.
have more of those receptors in our brain than any other receptor. So you
Hmm.
have to imagine what happens is the THC comes in, the chemicals that are made in your brain to try and keep it balanced cannot bind there anymore. So they can't, the THC hijacks the communication of your brain.
That's it.
And so
That's it.
now it becomes chaotic. So
Right.
things that should maybe be slowing down now are picking up, and things that should be, speeding up are now slowing down.
That's
So
it.
it creates chaos and it changes the communication. And that is especially dangerous during adolescence, because the brain during adolescence is going through many, many biological changes
Right.
that it needs to rely on that communication in that system to tell it what to do. But when THC comes in, it decides, I'm telling it what to do.
Oh my.
And so this is where it comes in. When you're an adult, your brain is fully developed after about 25. We have seen the risks of psychosis go down about after 21 years old, 21, 26. But from the ages of 12 to 19, the latest data I saw that just came out a couple months ago, where
Right.
they did a study where they followed, in Canada, followed people who were admitted for a psychotic disorder and used cannabis, ages 12 to 19, showed that people who use cannabis are 11 times more likely to develop a psychotic disorder during the ages of 12 to 19 versus people who don't use cannabis.
Wow.
So literally 11 times the risk. And this is data that they collect, epidemiological data that they're getting from the health system. So it's not something, but it's during adolescence. And that's my message, because I'm like, people think I'm just anti, like, you don't do this, but I'm like, just get this message out to kids. Get this
Precisely.
out to kids.
That's it.
They have to know this.
Exactly. Exactly. And to parents as well. It's very important.
Exactly.
And it's like, it's just, we're not completely demonizing something, right? It's not that. It's just that we're trying to be more aware of what the implications are to adolescents, to younger people whose brain is still developing, whose brain is still trying to figure out, like how it's going to function, how it's going to act. And you start putting in that very highly concentrates that we have today. And I mean, even me as an adult, I cannot imagine taking something so potent. And imagine having kids easily being able to easily access these today. There needs to be education that goes behind it. There needs to be an awareness that goes behind it. And we need to start being more taking this. Uh, if we are really, here's my opinion, Doctor Kirsten. If it's something that, especially when it comes to that conversation, if we want cannabis legalization to be taken more seriously, then we should be more open to conversations like this. We should be able to take conversations like this, because it's not a black and white thing. Cannabis, especially, having linked data like that, we cannot just ignore it. We're talking about younger kids whose future are in jeopardy, because we it's not just even the younger kids, their families as well, because the results of these and what we've experienced in our families is just, tremendous. It's difficult. It's incredibly difficult, and it's something that could have been prevented if we were a bit more aware. So we need to be more serious about taking these conversations and taking these seriously, in order for the whole legalization movement to be taken a bit more seriously, right? But Kirsten, I want to be able to talk about now your mission, or really your expertise. In your TEDx talk, you talk about neuroplasticity. Plasticity is called the rewiring revolution. I love it. I'm very excited about this. Like I said, I love that topic. Neuroplasticity. Talk to us a little bit about that. But in your TEDx talk, you said um, it's like New Year's resolution, right? You make
Yeah.
something, you make a resolution, you don't really get to it, you don't really do it, but eventually you do. But when you do, it's like you've successfully rewired your brain. Talk to us about neuroplasticity. Is there what happens when our brain is in a neuroplastic state? Is there a way to induce this, and how does it benefit us in the long run?
Great questions. Neuroplasticity, it really is the ability to reorganize the connections you have in your brain, and it's based
Mhm.
upon your thoughts. your lifestyle, your environment.
Mhm.
So you are able in this case, and through adulthood, you still have it. During adolescence,
Right.
it is it's so malleable like Play-Doh. You can do this. And this is why
Yes.
it's very important to
Mhm.
teach kids this. And
Yes.
also so this can be used for the good, making healthy connections, whatever they
Mhm.
want to do with their life. What I always ask kids, like, what do you want to do? What do you enjoy to do? Is there a sport? Is there music? Is there, a subject in school, whatever it might be? This is the time to
Mhm.
start doing it. And also, this is where I think most people will get it. Speaking to yourself.
Um,
What happens when you do something and, maybe you do something that you get embarrassed, or you
yes.
do something where you get something wrong.
Mhm.
And what does that voice say to you the minute that happens?
Right.
What is
Right.
that voice that comes in that you don't even know? Like you don't
Mhm.
it's just so normal that it comes back in all the time, every time you do something that is not perfect to you, right? And once you actually you can actually reorganize the connections in your brain
Right.
to be
Right.
kinder to yourself. You can redo that circuitry. And
Mhm.
what happens is like, or even taking an example of someone coming to you and
Mhm.
confronting you and
Mhm.
making you angry. We have,
Yeah.
there's called the 90-second rule.
Oh,
So when
yes.
something happens, and let's say someone makes me angry or gets me anxious, like they start telling me all this stuff and yelling at me, and you can feel that adrenaline pumping through you.
Yes. Yes.
You have 90 seconds from the time your emotional brain is
Okay.
stimulated
Okay.
and, and to where it releases these neurochemicals or neurotransmitters through your bloodstream to when they're cleared. It only takes 90 seconds. So from the time that emotional brain is stimulated, releases those chemicals, it gets cleared from your body, takes even a little less than 90 seconds. Okay. But then you ask someone, you go, well, why do you stay angry so long? Or why do you stay anxious so long? And it's because you keep rethinking that thought
That's it.
over and over and over. And when
Mhm.
you're doing that, that connection is being made.
Strengthened.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so when you're allowing stress to come in, so if you were to come and just start yelling at me and I could feel that stress, I have a choice right then.
Okay.
I have a choice. You cannot choose the way other people behave, but you
Right.
can certainly choose how you react to their behavior. So
Fascinating.
right at that point, I have a thing to say, okay, Joshua, I'm going to step back for a second.
Mhm.
I'm going to take a breath. And right then, what I have done is I have stopped that circuitry,
I
that
love that.
anxious circuitry, just by taking a step back.
Mhm.
Now, when you recognize that, the first time you recognize it, you start to change the neuroplasticity. It's going all the time in your brain. So it's not
Yes.
something that comes at dirt. It's all your brain is very plastic, but not half as plastic as it is when you're young.
Right.
But when you get
Wow.
older, it
Mhm.
just becomes harder and you got to do things a little bit more.
I
But
love
if you
that.
once you start to recognize when something triggers you,
Mhm.
you can stop and you have that ability to tell someone, I mean, you can say it to yourself, I'm not going to let you push to touch my neurocircuitry. I'm not going to let you do it. And you can breathe. You have 90 seconds. You let it go. And so, easier said than done.
Of
Much
course.
easier said than done, for sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
But to let people know that you have that power, everybody has that power to
Yeah.
let that, when they say, I'm stressed all the time, that is because you just keep thinking those thoughts over and over. And that
That's it.
circuitry through neuroplasticity has been hardwired in there. But
I
you
love
do
that.
have the ability to slowly, the less you let that circuitry run, those connections start to weaken and weaken and weaken, and you start to make maybe a new bridge going a
That's it.
whole different pathway, the
That's it.
kinder, gentler pathway.
I love that. I love the kinder, gentle pathway is the key word.
Yes.
And of course, I love how you explained it and also gave us an advice on how to build that pathway, so to speak. We cannot be constantly repeating this. We need to be building better habits. kinder habits, kinder to yourself, and of course, so that we can be kinder to others. Because a lot of times it's like we're taught to like, hey, you have to do this, and you have to have these values, you have to have these habits, but they're not really thought of in a scientific manner. And they're not really thought of in the context of neuroplasticity, that you are able to rewire your brain this way. Christian, while we are at this topic, just real quick, allow me again, this platform allow us the opportunity to debunk a few things. And of course, we were talking about drug use earlier. And of course, Silicon Valley has made it popular to microdose, so to speak, right? Microdosing LSD, microdosing hallucinogenics,
Psilocybin, yeah, or
psilocybin and whatnot and all
mhm,
that, and to
mhm,
induce neuroplasticity. This is very,
right.
very common misconception. I don't know if it's too much to jump into that, but I want to ask your opinion on this, and I think it's very important to debunk a few things. It's very important to, if there are myths surrounding that. What is your opinion in microdosing, and when it comes to neuroplasticity, is it really viable?
Okay, that is this will be a tough question because it actually
Please.
when you're under the influence of a
Hmm.
psychedelic or
Hmm.
hallucinogen, if that's what
Yes.
you want to say,
Yes.
it does increase the neuroplasticity in your brain. It
Yes.
greatly
Yes.
does.
Hmm.
However, there are um, there are people who when you do this, you should be under the care of a
An expert,
you know
precise.
a therapist or someone who is trained in this kind
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
thing. Now, the microdosing thing, honestly, I haven't looked enough to say exactly if it is work. It depends on what they're doing when they would be doing the microdosing, and every single person is completely different. All I can say on this is yes, it does increase the plasticity, but that could be good and bad. So
Yes.
yeah, that's there's no doubt that your brain becomes more plastic, but I think that anybody who takes any type of psychedelic, if they're doing that, should be under the care of. There are many facilities at Johns
Yes.
Hopkins and New
Yes.
York
Of course.
University that are doing these studies
Hmm.
where they actually have, I don't know what they call them, but guides or people that are with them.
Hmm.
And it's usually people. Yeah. So I really, I don't know enough about it, Joshua, to actually
Fair.
be to
That's fair. That's
debunk
fair.
anything.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I can say it does increase plasticity, but again, you don't know if if you're getting these things where you're getting it from. You don't know what else is in them. You don't know.
Precisely.
There, there's a lot of things like that. So,
I mean, it's the same thing, that like kind of approaching it with respect, right? Like for me, it's always with that. I think with people, I think right now, because it's become so famous, that Silicon Valley has made it so popular with microdosings, that people can do it, just on their own. Oh, it's just a microdose, just like a little drop, and then I'll be better at playing the piano if I play it under the influence. I mean, it has some basis to it. Talk to us about that.
well, I was going to say that if your thoughts are very powerful. So if you
Yes.
believe you're going to take this and you're going to be better at playing the piano, you will probably get
All
better at
right.
playing the piano
That's
because
it.
that's
Okay.
neuroplasticity.
That's it right there. And probably you
Yes,
probably don't even need psilocybin for that in the first place, especially the way you
that's
talked about.
correct.
That's
That's
it. That's it.
absolutely correct. You just put in some time on the piano and you got it.
Put in the work, right? So, and this is where I always tell my friends, and because they always go like, hey, wow, like this thing at Silicon Valley, and mushrooms, and acids, and I'm like, let's tone that down a little bit. Let's calm down, because there isn't like an exact science to it right there, right yet, so to speak. And again, these are surrounded with experts, and we should be surrounded by experts like you.
Yeah. Well, and I think that we really just need as a society to put in the work. You know
That's
what I
it.
mean? For everything. It's like
Everything.
put in the work
Hmm.
because that is what needs to be done now. And if
Hmm.
you really want to be better at something, there's there's no shortcut. You've got to work, and you will learn so much from that work.
Mhm.
It just froze. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
There
We're
you are.
back in there. Yeah. I hope I didn't cut off too long, but thank you for continuing. Thank you for sticking around. For finishing your answer and the thought there. Let me just pick it off real quick. Where when it comes to that, I do agree with working, just putting in the work. And whenever I talk to this about friends, what I always say is like, these drugs aren't gonna make you magically better at anything, right? It's whatever is in there already is just going to enhance it. So whether or not you are always anxious or you feel like you'll get better at, playing a certain thing or figuring out a certain thing, it's not a magic button to just suddenly, wow, you're no longer anxious. It's still the work that you put in, even with or without that influence of a substance. And again, I love that you go back to putting in the work, because I think this is central to mental health, Kristen. And I think, and I believe, again, this is what we want to talk about at the end of the day. How do we practice better mental health? And what are you doing right now to promote that to families, to adolescents? How can we take care of our mind much better?
Uh, One of the things is mindfulness, and when I
Yes,
say mindfulness, I mean taking the time each day. Um, we need to we need to have phone breaks. We need to
that's,
put
oh,
those phones away, and every time
of
that you
course.
are outside and you're walking,
Mhm.
and everybody, they're staring at their phone.
Yeah,
I mean, you have lost an opportunity to experience
absolutely. You
the
stop.
beauty around you. You've lost
Absolutely.
I mean, the breeze that's come in, the birds that are flying by, maybe someone walking right past you who are smiling
Mhm,
at you. You
mhm.
lose that. And I was in an airport, and I'm at this restaurant, and I looked around in the entire restaurant. Everybody, even though there
Oh
are
my.
2 or 3 people at a table, every single
Oh no.
person's on their phones.
Mhm,
Nobody's speaking to each other.
mhm.
And we wonder why people are having troubles with their mental health. And you need connection. And those phones are not the connection that we need. It's one of the pillars of mental health is connection with people and talking and feeling that. And, when we're just looking through social media, we're doing that. That is not a connection.
Mhm.
That is not the true connection that we need to actually, the endorphins, all those things
That's
that
it.
we need from physically connecting with somebody.
I love that.
And I really hope that there becomes some type of, um, you know, get off your phone campaign, and
That's it.
or even at dinner time, just with
Mhm,
families, just everybody forfeit
mhm,
your phones and put them
mhm.
somewhere else, and let's just talk. Play
That's it.
highs and lows. Tell me what was the best part of your day and the worst part of your day. Communication, it just needs to come back.
It truly
And
does. Truly
it
does.
really
Just
does. And
genuine.
that, I believe,
Mhm.
is number one.
That's
And
it.
that really has to do with mindfulness
Mhm, mhm.
and listening. And with parents and kids, it's, again, both of you getting off your phone.
Yes.
It's really trying to listen to your child.
Mhm,
As a parent, I was really good at lecturing
mhm.
and thinking I knew, and that's what parents do. They
Yes.
lecture, and they think, I've already been your age and I know. And I would now, of everything that's happened in my life, if I could go back, I would have listened a lot more. I would have listened a lot more and asked
Wow.
more questions, and
Absolutely.
just to really find out how my children were doing, and just had that pause, when they're
Mhm,
talking, listen to them and pause, and
mhm.
then ask another question, not answer, ask another question to them.
Very
So,
important.
yeah,
And I
I
and I
just
think.
think,
Mhm.
I was just going to say that we just, as families, finding that time, family meetings, let's bring those back. Sundays.
Important. Important. Why not? I mean, just for like what, 20-minute, 30-minute meeting, just stopping there and connecting, just talking to each other. I feel like you talk about communication and listening, and I feel like in the process as well is we forgot to listen to ourselves. We forgot how to just stop and listen to our thoughts, and why am I thinking this way? Why do I have these thoughts? And why is my thought process like so? And if we fail to listen to ourselves, I think we just have a much harder, difficult time to listen to others as well. And that is where I think stopping and pausing really, really works wonders, because now we're thinking, okay, how do I just get rid of my phone? It's so hard. I mean, we all doom scroll, right? To us at some point. It's so difficult, right? So I make sure, maybe, I don't know, lock it up, maybe put it somewhere. Again, I think the most important is dinner time. I love that. I'm an advocate of just sitting down, having dinner together with no other distractions. And if you're together in a house, why not just have dinner together and just talk and communicate? Listening, communicating, and really, again, it goes back to mindfulness. How are you dealing with your emotions? How are you dealing with what's happening around you? Kristen, if there's anything else that you would love to leave behind, a message right now, especially in what you teach and what you talk about in your keynotes, um, what is it that you would love to, for families and their children and everyone else, what is it that you think would be the most crucial habit, let's call it habit, so what's the most crucial practice that we should start now in order to have a better mental well-being?
That's the money question, right?
Mm,
I believe that we all, including adults and kids, we need to learn to sit, and you had said it, to sit with our emotions.
right.
And we need to not try to escape them.
Mhm.
We need to learn that when you're sad, it's not something, it's like, why am I sad? What is underneath
That's
everything?
it. That's it.
Everything, every emotion you have, there's something deeper that is having that emotion, start to erupt out of you. And it's really getting to the root. And when it comes to being a parent, just, if there's anything, just really, really talking to your child, having boundaries. I know that, but kids need boundaries. They need some
Yes, of
boundaries.
course.
And I'm talking loving boundaries.
Hmm.
But, I really believe that, that. And then I also want to say, just because I talk to a lot of parents,
Please, please.
for parents, anybody who's listening, what would be really good, because right now there's so many adolescents who are starting to get into substances
Hmm.
around 13 or so. If you can come up with a code word or something to have the conversation with your child, that if they
Wow.
go somewhere, to always think about how they would get out of a situation, and
Right.
have them think about that before they go to, like, let's say they're going to a party, and maybe you don't ask them and say, do you think there's going to be drugs there? Do you think there's going to be alcohol, whatever? But just tell
Right.
your child before and say, I really want you to think about any answers in case someone were to pressure you, or just
Of
to say,
course.
hey, I've got this, you want to try it?
Mhm.
I either tell them to have an escape plan before, so
Right.
they've already thought about it, so it's easy. They get out, they still look cool. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
not in that state.
Of course.
Or to, if they have their phone, again, their
Wow.
phone, but we want
Hmm.
them to have their phone here, to
Hmm.
text their parents a code word, and then their parents
That's it.
call and say, I'm going to come get you right now. Just
That's
so
it.
that there is that communication, because it's very difficult when you're a teen to feel like you want to fit in. And
Mm.
that's part of the emotional brain trying to mature. But just having that conversation with your child to tell them, let's think about all the different scenarios that you could
Mhm.
get into, and
Mhm.
let's try to find ways that you can get out of it without feeling like someone's going to make fun of you.
That's it. That's it. Wow. I love that. I love that piece right there, that advice right there, because I think we don't really talk about it, because again, but it's so crucial for adolescents, for teenagers. They want to look cool. They don't want to, I mean, they want to look cool to their friends. They don't want to get made fun of. But how do we even deal with this? And I don't think it's being talked about enough on how to cope with them, and how what are the methods that we can use, and how can parents help. That piece right there is so important. I think it will do wonders to, to any family and parents out there who feel like, this could be something that they might have to deal with down the road. Not just for any uh, risk teenagers, but I feel like for families in general, it's very important to have something like that. Of course, Kristen, the website is speakingthroughme.squarespace.com, and this is where you share your passion at the Warren Center for Neuroscience Drug Discovery, and you just educate, and empower more self-compassionate minds, healthy brains, and all of that. I love it, and it's a message that we need to talk about even more. Christian, where else can we find you? Where else can we connect with you? We'd love to learn more.
Yeah, so yeah, it would be through if what might be easier if you go to www.wcndd.com.
All right,
So
there you go.
wcndd.com, and
Mhm.
then you can go to the outreach button, and that will be the easy way to connect with me.
Fantastic.
And yeah, and they're fine. And I also made a film that's called Speaking Through Me. And so if people want to watch that, if they go to the website, there's a film that it's pretty much teaching adolescents about their brain and how it's developing, and but using three young kids who struggled through adolescence. And yeah, so people can go and watch that as well.
And of course, that film that we are talking about, the documentary "Speaking Through Me," has won numerous awards as well, and it's very important. It's an important topic to talk about. I invite all our audience and listeners to go watch that. Go check out WNCD.com,
So
CDD,
do you?
WCNDD.com. Okay, I'm sorry. I almost
Yes,
got that
that's it.
right. WCNDD.com. Go reach out to Kristen. And of course, Kristen, I'm very happy. I'm so honored to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing your story and your insight and your expertise.
I'm just so grateful for you reaching out, and I'm just sending you blessings in life. So enjoy every moment. We're only here for a short time.
That is true. That is true, and I will take that to heart, Kristen. And I send that the same love and light to you as well, and to all our audience and listeners out there. Thank you for watching the episode. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we will see you on the next. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.